Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, Mission Whitetail, episode 81. Very special guest today, Mr. Bert Sorin, a buddy of mine from here in South Carolina, owns Sorinex exercise equipment, Sorinex Outdoors, and is a big-time hunter, has hunted all over.
Not like you, but I try to keep up with you. You're like my, you're the bar in our area for sure. So as long as I can stay within striking range of you, I think we're doing all right.
No, I don't know about that. And
thank you.
Man, we appreciate more than you know. First of all, you coming on the podcast, but second of all, driving over here. You know, I know it's about a 20, 30-minute drive for you to get here. So
I had to fill up a couple times.
Appreciate that. And I believe your last podcast, or maybe you've done one in between, was with Joe Rogan. So
yeah, I've had a couple between now and then, but that was in December with Joe, and so that was quite the experience.
We were talking a little bit off air about it, and yeah, I can't imagine. You know, I asked you right off if you were nervous, and you were like, "Heck yeah, I was nervous."
Yeah, you're talking to the conversational ninja of our generation, and on probably the most videoed person of all time, you know, or listened to. Right?
Without a doubt.
There's been no other media in human history that has been as large and as from a distribution standpoint as Joe. So yeah, it's terrifying because you're like, whatever I say, there is no editing and there's no stopping, and it's going to become a meme if it's super stupid.
Yeah, and you got to know your stuff backwards and forwards, which you do.
Well, I appreciate that, but the other part of it is you don't know where the conversation's going. There's no prep. There's no, we're going to talk about anything or nothing, and so you're just like, hold on for the ride. It's wild. It's like stepping into a ring and fighting a guy that is a black belt in all fighting skills. You know nowhere that he's going to go, and you just try to stay in the ring for 3 hours.
And he'll know if you're not being truthful or if you're confused about something, and he'll double down on that, won't he?
Yeah, he will. And his EQ is so off the charts. Like his mind is a steel trap, which I think is certainly a special power that he has because he forgets nothing. Right. I've heard him. He and I were talking 4 years ago when we did the gym at his house, and he referenced my story 6 months later and hit it verbatim. He's like, "Yeah, a friend of mine," and he went and gave the story. And I'm like, "Oh, so you forget nothing."
Nothing. An elephant.
You're right. And then so I started kind of understanding. It's like, okay, super high EQ, super high IQ, extremely interested, forgets nothing. And then just like, remember on the movie The Highlander when he cuts off everyone's heads and gets everyone's power?
Yep.
It's like Joe talking to everyone. He sucks in all of their power and all their information. So like at scale, he gets smarter. He's like
That's
weird
scary.
AI.
That's
then
scary.
he has everyone's stories because he doesn't forget them. And you're like, bro, you've turned into an encyclopedia.
Surely.
Yeah.
He is Google.
It's not far off.
No, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a great podcast. I enjoyed every second of that. Let's back up.
Okay.
And we let's do like your early childhood.
Sure.
You know, your dad is obviously in the fitness arena.
Mm-hmm.
You and your dad have an incredible relationship, like my dad and I.
Yeah.
And you grow up in, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in a hunting family, a fitness family. Right. So take us back a little bit, and you've probably done this 50 times, so I'm sorry to do it again.
No, it's fine. It's easy to, you don't have to study for your life, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Pops was obviously a big, huge influence in my life.
Yep.
And his strength and conditioning and strength has always been kind of his first love, with the outdoors kind of running neck and neck. So when I was a little boy, you know, I'm getting taken on hunting and fishing trips, and he would always, kind of looking back, there's always that training of that little bit of stress induction of, hey, Bert, like, I don't know where we are. Tell Daddy which way we got to get home. He knew exactly where we were. But it was building in confidence for me, and also to start paying attention. Well, when we hit this dirt road, do we take a right or a left? Did we do this? And so there was always this very intentional training with me since I could barely walk, when he was picking me up over the mud puddles, of pay attention in the woods, be capable, and try to, just train me in that way. And so, strength conditioning is a kind of a hard thing for little kids. And so that wasn't super, I saw him doing it and working out all the time, but I wasn't super interested in it because you're a little kid, right?
Sure.
But hunting and fishing was the easiest, obviously, lowest barrier of entry, but hunting was always something I held super high regard. And I didn't get to do it as much as I wanted to, but, of course you have the BB guns and the slingshots and everything else that fires arrows, bullets, whatever. And as I grew, it was kind of all I wanted to do was have that, those little adventures. And I think I shot my first bear at 12 in Maine, and I shot my first big game animal was a really big wild boar when I was 10. So I was in that world pretty early. And but what I appreciate Pops was always, we would go to hunt camp or whatever, and this was back in the 80s, and so you weren't seeing a lot of little boys in hunt camp.
Sure.
And so guys would give him a hard time, and they were like, "Well, this little kid,
we can't be ourselves."
We can't be ourselves, or this. We're gonna have to we'll be babysitting this kid. Well, and also I showed up to hunt camp at 12 years old with a 458 Win Mag. That was my first hunting rifle.
Good gosh.
They were hand-loaded 300 grain hollow points.
My gosh.
I never shot anything below a 458 until I was 14 years old. I didn't know there were other guns. I was like, well, this is what he wants me to shoot, I guess. And I just leaned forward.
Recoil City.
Yeah, it was. But I'm 75 pounds, so strangely enough, it just pushes you. And so I shot my first hog, my first bear, everything with 458. That's what I just thought. So Pops was a big safari guy. That was the dreams. And so we had all these safari rifles. So he was like, hey, let's do it. So kind of funny. That was my first, so I show up to bear camp. All these guys are, oh, we're going to have to deal with this kid. He goes, hey, he'll be okay. Don't worry. And so I ended up shooting a bear the first night out, and no one else in camp shot one for 2 or 3 days. And so I didn't realize, but it really put him in a really good position to gloat.
Yes.
And so then I could see now, if I was a dad, am a dad, if I was getting crap and then my son came in and popped a bear, ran 30 yards, boom, dead, and then my son went out back and fly fished for the rest of the week, I'd be like, I'm all right.
Yes.
All right. So,
solid.
Yeah, solid.
Yes.
So that was kind of my first experiences with it. And so that built in a confidence right there where I kind of started realizing doing anything above the expectation level that the world thinks that you can do is always held in high regard. Mm-hmm. And so I started enjoying that, and that carried over to other hunting, to sports, to strength, to athletics, to eventually business. And so kind of the mantra became, as I started developing it, was, what is the expectation line in life? Where do people think you'll achieve? And try to hit as many data points above that as possible. Mm-hmm. That's kind of inadvertently became the goal. So yeah, grew up hunting, fishing.
Yep.
And
South Carolina your whole life.
South Carolina my whole life. I've lived within 20 miles of where we're sitting here for 48 years.
Yep.
And went to school a mile down the road. And actually, Key Road was where we used to practice track and field hammer throw. And so when I was in college, we didn't have a lot of money. So you're a poor college kid, and I wasn't on scholarship yet. So I would take my Powerline 880 BB gun to practice. I can't believe they would let me do it, because your Pennington seed plants right there.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be.
Pigeons and doves.
And morning doves would land on the power line. And so I would throw, I'd go out and get my hammer, I'd come back and I'd stand in line. I mean, this was a SEC college, legitimate practice. And my coach let me bring my BB gun to practice. And between throws, I would pick doves off the power line and drop them in right on, I guess it would have been Key Road or Shop Road.
Yeah.
And I would drop them right on the road. And then on the way to the weight room at the Williams-Brice Stadium, I'd drive over there and pick them all up and throw them in my truck. I'd go home and breast them out, and that's what I would eat.
Protein, best you could
Free
get.
protein. Now, I think the statute of limitations has passed for having
Definitely has.
having licenses to shoot
Definitely
migratory
has,
birds
yeah.
off a power line. But, at 18 years old, you don't really.
Yes.
You just grow up shooting whatever.
We all did it.
We all did, right? But that was I looked back and I was like, yeah, I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to hunt and I wanted to eat, and I was like, man, I could put these two together. And then later when we were training, we'd get done with practice that morning and I'd go down under the Gervais Street Bridge and stand in that cold water instead of going to the training room for hydrotherapy, just sit in an ice bucket. I go, I'm going to go stand under the bridge and cast a bucktail.
There you go.
You know, and you get vitamin D and the whole deal. So I've always tried to like incorporate the outdoors as much as possible into my strength and conditioning, human performance.
And I see the same thing with your sons. Right. You know, I follow you. Obviously, we're buddies and text a lot. But you know, through social media, I've kind of watched your kids grow.
Kind of wild, right?
It is. but you do such a good job as a dad with doing the same things. I can see that. You know,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But it's they're turning into capable young men.
I appreciate that. Thank you. That's the goal. When my wife and I, we had kids, we kind of jokingly said, we want to raise kids like we're raising in the 70s and 80s. And so my kids are 9, 11, and 13. They don't have phones. They don't have screens of any type. They could only watch TV when we tell them that they could use TV. So after that, it's just be outside. So, you know, they're walking around with one shoe on most days, you know, and shirts on backwards and grubby stuff under their fingernails. And I walked down to the dock the other day and my son Kodiak had caught a duck, you know, and like, you know, he's just like, great, man, like get after it.
Yes.
And so, you know, they're catching, do you know there's little shrimp in Lake Murray?
Like grass shrimp?
Yeah, little grass shrimp. Yeah, they're down there catching those and building rock live wells and all kinds of, it's like, let them do that as much as humanly possible. And we homeschool.
Yeah.
And so kind of the idea is, you know, let them be a part of nature as much as possible. So I appreciate that. And when you were saying about the kids, so that was been very intentional, but something my dad, I experienced, but then he told me later, you know, I make my money in the sporting world from strength and conditioning for the most part. I don't remember ever throwing a ball with my dad, ever. And I asked him one day, I was like, why didn't you ever do that? He goes, well, because I figured that, let's say if you play baseball or football, you'd be 17 or 18 statistically the last time you ever played high school. He goes, and so if that was how our relationship was built on us, you know, throwing the baseball at 10 years old and then me watching you play baseball until 18, most likely you weren't going to go to college because just statistically. He goes, so our relationship would kind of end of what we were into when you're 18. He goes, if I taught you how to lift weights and we lifted together, and I taught you how to hunt and fish and camp, he goes, I have a hunting buddy for my entire life.
Yes.
And so I tried to take that model and go, hey, you know, let me get my kids, my boys and girls into, you know, kind of sounds crazy, like what I'm into, because that's a lifelong sustainable thing. I mean, I hunted with my dad the year he passed almost a year ago, and last April, almost to the day, my two boys, my dad and I were all sitting in a ground blind together when my oldest son killed his first turkey.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, 11-inch beard turkey, and 3 generations of Sorin men were all
so
sitting
awesome
together, and that was the last time we ever hunted together.
Yeah.
And so, you know, literally until kind of the last curtain close, he got what he wanted. So I always appreciate him being so intentional, and I'm just trying to be intentional.
No, he was wise beyond his years because there's no roadmap on raising children, right? There's no, and you know, I look back now and my son played baseball and football, and I played baseball in college and was probably, if I could go back and do something over, I was too hard on him in Little League, right? You know, and it wasn't, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's you trying to live through your son. That really wasn't it, because I'd had a pretty good baseball career. Mine was more, I just wanted success for him.
Correct.
And so
you knew the roadmap to get there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, but if I could go back and do it over, you know, but again, it's like your dad was wise beyond his years. Like did you have brothers and sisters?
I didn't.
Didn't.
So I'm an only child. He was an only child.
Gotcha.
And so I think there was a little bit of that. He always wanted a buddy.
Yeah.
And then as growing up, I always wanted brothers and sisters. But my dad, once we kind of became both adults-ish, we were into the same stuff. So, I mean, the day he passed, he was in my office for a couple hours, and we were talking about I was training for the SIG hunter games, or whatever they call the ARC games. And then we were talking about my African hunt coming up, and then we were doing stuff in the gym together. Like 48-year-old man and a 74-year-old man, like still like, and we're talking about the Missouri farm. Hey, we're going to do this. I'm going to move that stand to the north side. Like, And I look at that and I go, man, what a beautiful relationship is. We were still just business as usual till like the whole time.
Yeah.
And so that's hopefully what, and I go back and forth. I said, should I push the kids more and, get them into sports more? I got obviously nothing against sports. I was an athlete in college as well. But I realized I got into sports later. And when I did, I wasn't burnt out. So when I came to South Carolina, I was like
hungry.
The excitement of a 10-year-old as in an 18-year-old's body. And so all my friends, a lot of them, they had gotten to college, and you kind of see they took their foot off the gas. They're like, I made it. I got a scholarship to college. And they're like, just to kind of ride it out. And I was like, no, now's like when you like
go.
Like, let's go now, And so I think that's where my athletic career really spiked, because I wasn't tired of it. I wasn't burnt out. I mean, I went another 10 years after college in professional sports because I hadn't had enough. And the only reason I had enough is because my body finally started telling me you've had enough.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with being a late bloomer, or the kids getting into stuff when they get into it. Will it hurt them? Would they maybe not be the best baseball player in the world if they didn't start at 6? Probably. But you know what? I want them to enjoy their childhood. I want them to enjoy friends and making bike ramps and camping in the backyard and checking catfish lines with me and goofing around. And the reality is, like, I'm a pretty big, explosive guy. My wife's a 6-foot-tall college volleyball player. If my kids want to be good at something, they were kind of born on third genetically.
Right.
Like, I kind of realized that. And so it's like, not saying to take out the hard work, but I think having a childhood is fine.
Yes.
Having a childhood is fine. And if they decide to get into something, great. They got good tools. They picked the right parents.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I guess shifting now, let's hit on business just a little bit. This is a completely, we're gonna circle back around into the hunting side of things. But you just have to me a very fascinating, cool life.
Likewise.
And so it's awesome to spend time with you. But business wise, your dad started Sorinex.
He did in 1980 out of our carport, or his carport. I lived with my mom. He started. He was a bachelor guy and was a elementary school coach and teacher, and started Sorin Playgrounds, and then started Sorin Equipment, and then in 1992 we changed the name to Sorinex for Sorin Exercise Equipment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he started it, and it was never intended to be a big business. It was never intended to like make a lot of money. It was never none of that. He just had a passion for it, probably much like you do in hunting and camo, and it was just probably very similar. I think I could do it better than what's on the market.
Yeah.
And I want to change, for him it was the strength world. I want to change the strength world and be relevant within the strength world and change it for the better. I think I can. And I'm pretty good at building stuff, and he's an artist, so he had things in his mind. He's like, I just have to go out in the garage and see if I could do it.
In the garage.
And whether it was, I was dealing with it earlier, and thankfully that's been passed down to me. But I was in Egypt, like firing off notes in my phone, and I couldn't wait to get home to try something. Because I was like, what if this works? I think that'll work. And yeah, of course, now I'm smart enough to know how to turn it into a product or something. But part of it is just I want to know if it works.
Sure.
And my wife, we call it run the experiment, which in my opinion it's hunting. It's, and she like, I'll be driving, I guarantee you do the same thing. You drive down the road, every power line you pass or every field you pass.
Is there turkey strutting out there?
Exactly.
Deer?
We're at the back of that field where it drops down right before dark. Their bucks will come out there for sure. Right. And my wife will go, you just have to know, don't you? And I go, yeah, I have to run the experiment. Like, my hypothesis tells me that there will be turkeys on that power line. The data tells me that it's happened before. But I have to run the experiment, i.e. I have to look.
Right.
I have to gather the data because I just got to know.
Yep.
The scientific method I have to do. So it's like all deer season, all it is for me is run the experiment. It's, I know what I think this buck is going to do. I think the pressure's going up, that this is happening, this and that. All my hypothesis tells me this, but I got to get data. I got to go out and check it out. But that's where design is. That's where training is for me. Training is a hypothesis. Over the next 8 weeks, if I do these exercises in this sequence and fashion with this volume and this intensity, this will occur. You could talk about it all day until you just get under the bar for the next 8 weeks, and then That's your data points, and then you come with a conclusion. Was I right? Was I wrong?
Yep.
And so what I've realized now, like from an explorer standpoint, I'm an explorer. I just have to run the experiment. I got to know if it works.
That's awesome. What a good saying. Run the experiment. Yeah.
That's all the deer season is.
Yep.
For both of us, I know we have a draw. I know when you're sitting, I would assume you're just like me. When you're sitting on your couch the few times during October, November, you're thinking about what's happening. I wonder if, when that phone dings, when my picture comes through, what it is. Oh, I got to know what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
What's that data point?
Yep.
And you're like, I was right.
Yep.
It did show up. And then it's just, that's the addictive quality of it. And so it's neat because 2 or 3 things in my life, I have the same feedback loop.
Yep.
Which is design, which is, program implementation, strength training, hunting, fishing. I have a pond and lake and stuff. It's like sometimes I just got to walk down there and cast a couple times. Well, what if they are?
There you
go. I told
That's
my wife,
right.
I said, one night I'm going to walk down to the dock and there will be a school of 40-pound stripers. It never happened before in my life. I have no reason to think it will, but I know if I don't walk down there and cast, it won't ever happen.
Your chances go way up with your lure in the water.
Way up,
Way
and
up.
So I just got to run the experiment. She's like, you will do this every day. I said, yes. Every freaking day I can, I will do this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so.
But
That's the drive.
Yeah, and it's, so many, you see so many, sons come into the family business or take over a family business and squander it. You see that a good bit.
Yeah.
I think you literally, I say it all the time, took the football and ran with it. I mean, you have really, I remember when you guys, we're kind of in a shopping center here, right?
Yeah, sure.
We're Osseo is growing. We've grown out of our first 2 spaces. Now we're in a third one. This podcast studio is in our third
Super
space.
exciting time.
It is very exciting. A lot of hard work. Yep. Andrew and Wells are back here behind us, and they're as bought in as I am.
True believers.
Exactly.
Yep,
but
sure.
I remember when you guys were in a shopping center.
Of course. We've been in other people's gyms. We've been in shopping centers. All of it. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And what do you attribute the not to get into business coach, turning this into a business coaching podcast, but you guys went from shopping center to your monster facility on I-20. Mm-hmm. It's pretty unbelievable. What do you think? What do you think? Cliff Notes version took it from that to where you are now? That's
a great question. There's a lot of points. I would say probably one of the biggest things you have to, you got to have your light giver in some ways. And a light giver is a term that one of my mentors coined. And a light giver means someone who could illuminate that path further than you can. And it doesn't mean that person owns the business, whatever, but sometimes someone comes in and goes, you know what? Osseo could do what, when you see this, and this is like so deja vu to me, like this kind of facility, right? If someone told me 10 years ago you would have 250,000 square feet of warehouse space and
a quarter of a million
of
square feet,
when 13 years ago I was in 2,500 square feet.
Yes.
Like strip mall, and I would have been like, what? That makes. But I had someone came in. It was my COO that I eventually hired, and he would push, and he would go, no, this could happen. I'm like, it was hard to conceive of that, and then but he would illuminate that path for me and Dad, and because we had the passion, but we just didn't fully see what it could be, and none of us really knew what it could be.
Right.
But it was like that light giver gives you that path like further than you could see, and then helps you work through it. And then I would say tyranny of will is a big thing, and just refusing to lose.
100%.
That is when it's your name, and for me it was my dad, who I was terrified of till the day he passed. I didn't want to screw it up for him, and people were like, oh gosh, like you said, well, you didn't squander the business. Like, there ain't no way I'd have done that. You ever seen my dad?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And so, but my thought, the best way that I could respect him for bringing me into the business was to help to grow it as much as I could so he could realize the benefits of that while he was still here.
Yeah.
That was my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so he told me one day, he was like, well, I think how did he put it? He kind of said, well, like this is your opportunity, whatever. And I said, yeah, and I'm your retirement. I said, so if you give me the gas to go out and get this done, you won't have to work anymore, and you could enjoy whatever you want to do. And my goal, I said, my gift to you is to do as good as we possibly can while you're still here to enjoy it.
Yes.
And I said, and after that happens, whatever, all bets are off. I said, but while you're still here, my goal is to respect what you've started and optimize the potential of this whole experience. I'm not going to wait till he passes or we set like whatever to like, oh, okay, now we're going to turn on the gas. Like, no, I'm going to turn on the gas right here, and we're all going to pour into this thing and just see what it could be. And I told my guys, this was 13, 14 years ago now, we had seven employees. We had a 2,500 square foot gym, and we had a 700 square foot warehouse, very similar to this, like a strip mall kind of thing. And we thought we were something with our 700 square feet of quick ship products, pallet racking, or our forklifts or our hands, the whole thing. And this was only 2010.
Yeah.
And so we're 7 of us, and we're kind of. It was just stressful time, and I pulled the guys aside, my staff, and I said, it was on a Friday afternoon. I said, listen, guys. So I've been thinking, I guess 15 years ago, so I'd been 33, and I said, listen, I really think we're doing something special here. I think the designs and the things that we're doing within the industry could take over. I think it's truly better. However, it's going to take ultimate sacrifice from everybody here. I said, so what I need to know is if you're on the ship or not, and I'm okay if you're not, but Monday I need to know. Like, this is Friday. I need you to think about it for the weekend. I was like, I'm going to need everyone working like go home and sleep, and then after that, we're here. And I said, and if we do this, I believe that in 3 years that we could be on the path to where this business can go, or we're going to run the son of a bitch into the ground in 2.
Sure.
I said, because then at least we'll know regardless.
Yeah.
I said, I'll be 35, half you guys will be in your upper 20s, and I said, and then we'll either succeed or we'll fail at velocity, and then we'll all still be young enough to go do something else.
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't want to wait till I'm 40 to decide if we're going to push, because all of us will have utilized our youth kind of feathering the clutch and kind of half-assing it. I was like, so if we're going to just dump into this, all 9 yards, belt fed, no freaking ammo left at the end of this fight, like for the next 3 years, if you're good with that, I need you here Monday. If not, no harm, no foul. And everybody showed up.
All 7 of them.
And we're like, let's go. And like,
how motivational is that, boys? I mean, the parallels. I mean, obviously, you and I are the same age. I started Osseo 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, you look at our team. I mean, they're sitting back here.
So reminds me of my team.
It's unbelievable.
So reminds me of my team. And now we have 202 employees, and all over the country, and all this other stuff. But this is us 15 years ago. And
so cool.
But that's the thing, is like, you have to fully be like, all right, burn the boats behind us. There is no going back. If this thing is either going to work, it's going to work, or it's not going to work, and we're all going to have to go get jobs.
Yeah.
But the only way to find out which one of those things are going to happen is to just jam the gas down as hard as you possibly can, and realize, like, we was like, all right, go home and tell your wives, like, the next 3 years is going to suck.
Yeah, we're getting after it.
We're going to get after it.
Yeah.
And then in that 3 years, like, we grew, like, and we didn't turn into what we are now in the 3 years, but we got enough sniffs of it. It was like, oh,
this is possible.
there's blood in the water now.
Yeah.
Like, we're making something happen.
Yeah.
And we were just like, okay, we're going to change the industry from the inside. And in 3 years, you catch some big jobs, you hit some big stuff, you put some new things on the market that no one's doing. You start seeing that turn. And instead of 7 of us, there's 18 of you, and then everyone's kind of getting it. And everyone has that little bit of pissed off swagger, like, no, like,
yeah, we're the real deal.
We're the real deal, and you're a pirate ship,
and we're coming for you.
Everyone is hungry, and everyone's on the menu.
Yeah,
and you're just like,
That is so awesome. And something you said when we came over to prep for the Winter Strong event that I say it kind of all the time now, and Andrew was with us, but you know, we've always looked at it, and I won't drop name brands here, but the big three in the apparel space industry, the big three.
Sure.
We all know who the big three are. But you told me very candidly, you said, whoa. You said, who's your size, right? Who is your size right now? That is who you need to be beating. You need to beat the guys that are your size. So we kind of rekindled our sights, and we've got a couple companies that are our size that are exactly
in that space.
Win that space, and then the next tier up. Once you beat them, then the next tier up, then the next tier up, and then it's time to go for
because you could lay a lot of blood on the field trying to beat up the Death Star.
Yeah.
And
you're not going to beat them.
You're not going to beat them, right? But also one day, like, and it was really how I used to compete in track and field. It was like, you know, I think my first year of going to Penn relays, I was in the B level, you know, and you try to beat, you know, I would always call myself the apple cart guy, which meant wherever I was ranked going into, I wanted to be ranked higher going out of the meet, meaning I wanted to break up the apple cart. My goal was to send somebody home. I was pretty sadistic about it. I wanted to make someone cry at the end of the day and go, who was the Sorin kid that came up? And his coach yelling at him going, how did you let the Sorin kid beat you? And I wanted some guy on a payphone to call his mom or his girlfriend and go, I don't know. I was supposed to get third and I got fifth because Sorin came up and PR'd. Like, my goal was like blood in the water.
Yes.
And that was what I took into this world. But it was like, I'm going to go into the B section and I'm going to make people sad because I'm going to beat the living crap out of them. I'm going to be just biting. And then when I get better, I'm going to get invited to the A section. The next year at Penn Relays, I was in the A section, biting. The next year it was the invite section, biting. The next year it was in the pro section. And the goal was always the same. It was just overperform.
Right.
Whatever everyone thinks you're going to do, perform above that.
Yep.
At whatever level you're at. And so it's like all the businesses your side, outperform them.
Yep.
Outdo it. Don't worry about all the big boys that we know. Because the bottom line is you could only do as good as you could do, right? And you can't go from I'm just making up numbers, a $5 million business to a $100 million business in a year. You'd have the speed wobbles and you'd explode.
You would explode. Couldn't do it.
So there's no way to do it. So if you're grow at 20%, sweet. Grow at 20%, sweet. Hey, in 15 years, you're somebody to deal with.
Yes, sir.
You know? And that's what we experienced through the thing. It's just like, stay focused, I'm going to beat the people in front of me. And that was, now, we screw that up sometimes because we went after the Death Star a couple times, and you could convince yourself that
it's time. We're punching outside your weight class.
And you punch outside your weight class, and you get swatted. You're like, we're not ready for that.
Right.
All right. But then one day you wake up, you're like,
we are ready.
Right. We are ready, and the big boys are like kind of worried about us now. And
yeah.
You're like, oh, that's a change of fate.
Yep.
But you're like, oh, it's 15 years of like
grinding.
And the safety's off. Like, you know, you're ready to shoot.
We know how to fight.
Yeah, fangs out going into it. And that's what we'll talk about, like in some business deals. You're like, you know, one of my buddies was a fighter pilot, and he would always say, he was always in business too, he's like, well, you came your fangs out on that one. That was like when they were start doing these maneuvers coming in and missile lock was on and everything. He's like, you're coming fangs out, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you're ready to get it.
You know your stuff, you know what it takes.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean derogatory of anyone else, but it's everything is effort based, and are you doing the extra work? And my wife one time, she was like, what do you have an exit strategy of Sorinex? Or some of my friends are like, what's your exit? I said, my exit strategy is working 40 hours a week at some point. Yeah. I like to get to a normal pace of life.
Sure.
Would be what I consider success. It's not selling. It's not sitting on the beach. It's not having to go fangs out for the next 15 years. Because I did for the last.
Right.
And that's fine. It's okay. It's part of it. That's why you do it while you're young.
Yep.
You know? And so, no, that's interesting that you picked up on that.
No, for
that
sure.
Was something
we talk about that all the time.
That I didn't.
You didn't realize the impact that had.
No, and I didn't realize, like, I probably should have listened to that more times.
Very helpful for us. But we can transition this. We talk about it, it seems like all the time. And I think, maybe 2 or 3 podcasts ago, I did a solo one and we talked about this. But it is always the same adage, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's business, family, it doesn't matter. And
it's always the same equation. Right?
It is. Back to whitetail, the harder you work, the more knowledge you get, the better, more successful you're going to be at it.
And going to like competition, we ain't killing 180-inch deer here.
No.
Don't try to compete with the guys in Iowa.
No.
We know what deer are around here. Let's do the best we can and put in the effort and put in and I would consider you probably one of the better or best deer hunter in the area. And I tell people that. People are like, well, Joe Miles. I go, listen, what I know about Joe Miles is he shoots more big stuff every year consistently than anyone I know in an area that I know consistently is hard to do it, and he does it with a bow. I said, so I'm playing the same game he is, and he's beating my butt.
Oh, no.
So what I know is I have utmost respect for you. Now,
well, I appreciate that.
And so, but that's what I'm saying. You've put forth the effort. You're problem solving. You're looking at things differently, like you saying in your intro, like the why behind things, and that's kind of talking about different perspectives. Pops taught me when we would go in the gym and be building something. Sometimes, literally, he would just lay on the ground and just look at it and go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm just looking at it from a different point of view, like physically."
Legitimately
a
looking.
6'5", 280-pound man who would just lay on the ground and would just look at it. And he's like, this input will give me something different to how to solve this problem. And I do it all the time now. Sometimes I'll lay down. Sometimes I'll go across the room. And you just look at a problem a whole bunch of different ways, and it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's something that no one's ever done. Like, did I tell you about, maybe someone else has done it. I talked to Mark Drury at a wedding the other day, and he'd never heard of anyone doing it. I figured it out in Missouri one day, and it's just a different way to look at something. And so if you guys start doing it out there, or someone's already done, I'm sure they probably have, but if you start doing it out there, y'all DM me and let me know if it works.
Yeah.
So, you're hunting, and I only hunt my Missouri farm in November, so I don't step foot on it generally much because I just don't have time. So I'm there during the rut, and of course, is cold. So what is the ground? The ground's a bunch of dry leaves. And so let's say the wind changes or something, and I have to go from up that ridge to the bottom or whatever, the thermals. Yep. And you're like, I got to go like 200 or 300 yards through these woods, or 500 yards, whatever it is. And it's the noisiest thing on earth walking through those woods. And then you try to sneak and you try to do all this stuff, and it doesn't work. If you figured out how to make it work, let me know, because I haven't yet. So I was like, you know what? I saw that buck chase that doe earlier today, making all kinds of racket. And I was like, I put my grunt call in my mouth, and I ran through the woods. And so I was like, I got to go 200 yards that way. I'm going to run in 50-yard burst, and I'm going to kind of gallop as I run. I'm going to go, Literally, that's just how I'm getting to point A to point B. And when I get to point B, I'm going to pick a group of trees. I'm going to run 50 to 100 yards to that group of trees, and I'm going to set down in it immediately, knock my arrow, and I'm going to sit for the next 15 minutes. The first day I did that, I had 3 bucks, borderline shooters, 3.5-year-old deer. 3 bucks out of 3 times came within 50 yards of me. And I'm like, how have I not been doing this before? But I thought about it, and I go, I can't be quiet, so don't be quiet.
Sure.
Be loud. Sound like a buck chasing a doe during the rut.
Yeah.
And I do it now from time to time. I'm like, I'm going to kill a giant one day doing that.
Yes.
Like an absolute stud hammer is going to come in.
Right.
And I never heard anyone do it. I mean, I'm sure people have, but it was just one of those looking at a problem a different way and go, instead of trying to be quiet, sound like a buck chasing a doe. And not only was it not running deer off, but it was pulling deer
into you, and you had to get over there anyway.
I got to go there anyway.
Yep.
And I could get there way faster.
Yep.
Instead of like, ninja sneaking. And then when you're so worried about walking through the woods, you're not looking for deer. And that's what my uncle taught me years ago when we were down in Bowman hunting. We were walking. We used to walk what they call heads, like heads of woods with a 12-gauge shotgun, and he's like just kicking up deer and and shooting them, right? And I was like, man, how do you worry about snakes and stuff like that? He goes, oh, there's snakes everywhere. He goes, wear your snake boots, look for deer. He goes, if you're hunting snakes, you're not hunting deer. He goes, don't look down, walk through the woods and shoot the deer when they jump up. And it was just like a little reminder of like, you can't be focused on 50 other things if you're looking for deer.
Right.
And so, I don't know.
Eye on the prize.
Right.
Well, let's talk Missouri. Obviously you and I both are South Carolina boys, and we travel out of state a lot. You have had a ton of success in Missouri on your Missouri farm.
Yes, sir.
Walk us through why Missouri. You've got Ohio, you've got Kansas, you got Illinois. Prime example, a guy messaged me this morning and said, if you had to pick any state, Indiana, Ohio, Kansas, Illinois, he said, I want to start hunting out of state. Which state would it be? And my reply to him was, all of those, he said, I want to shoot 150-inch whitetail. I said, all of those states can produce 150-inch whitetail. Every single one of them, no problem. The key is going to be your relationship in that area, or your ability to find an area or get permission, because I can have the worst farm in Illinois and it may be 500 acres, but then I have 20 acres in Ohio that's world class.
World class.
So it all depends on what you yourself, the relationships in the area you're able to secure.
Yes.
So I'm guessing, you and I have never talked about this before, there was some connection or something that said, okay, I can go to Missouri, and when I got there, light bulb went off, and I need to stay here. This is the spot. I'm in the Midwest, and boom.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So as growing up here, shooting little deer our whole life, or my whole life, I think the biggest deer I'd shot in South Carolina was a 122, 123-inch 8-point, which is still a big
That's
deer.
a good deer
That's
for here, giant.
But, a lot of 100-inch 8 points and stuff, because that's just what you do. So I've always wanted to hunt the Midwest, read all the magazines. I mean, I was reading Gene Winsel books, hunting October whitetails.
Oh, yeah.
Or rutting whitetail, whatever one, the old red cover book. I mean, that's one of the first things I remember at 8 years old, being at the beach with my dad, looking over his shoulder, sitting in his lap while he's reading that book. We were at Cherry Grove, and I'm looking like, and I remember just seeing how huge those deer are, and I'm like, I want to do that one day. And actually kind of crazy that Mike Lemke, he sent me Gene Winsel's new, the Whitetails, et cetera. He sent me a signed copy of that yesterday.
That's really cool.
I got it in the mail. So thanks, Mike, if you're listening. But yeah, I grew up like, the whole Gene thing, and I went to a Barry Winsel camp in Iowa, 2003. And, Gene and I were emailing back and forth the day he killed Woody. And so he emailed me, he's like, I've killed a buck of 10 lifetimes. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
He sure did.
I think I'd killed like a 100-inch whitetail at that point. I was losing my mind, getting an email from Gene Winsel, like, hey, check this out, right?
That's cool.
So anyway, I just dreamt about that. So a guy that actually still works for me, Dan McKim, his grandmother, he and I were Highland Games athletes together. We were in Scotland in 2007 for the U.S. team. And then we were driving around, and he was telling me, he was like, I go, oh, you're hunting? And he goes, oh, yeah, and he was telling me all these crazy bucks that he was seeing. I'm like, this isn't a thing. Like, you don't see deer like, he was like, well, one was a 14-point, one's I'm like, wait, what are we talking about?
Right.
Like, this is fake news. So years and years later, I ended up hiring him for sales position, and he invited me to come out and hunt his grandmother's farm with him. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll check it out. And I was there maybe 30 minutes. And I killed a 285-pound 11-pointer that scored right at 140. And it was the biggest deer I'd ever seen in my life. And I was there like 30 minutes, literally 30 minutes. I was like, wait, hold on. Like, what in the world kind of place is this? And he's like, yeah. And I remember being all proud. We took it up to the farm, and his dad saw it, and he goes, oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'm like, wait, this isn't like
a monster?
Yeah, you're not like taking pictures of this. And he was like, oh, no, there's the big ones around, but that's a good one. I was like,
there's big ones around.
Like, what kind of bizarro world are we talking about?
Yeah.
So we hunted over the next few days trying to get a deer for him, and we called in, and you call in South Carolina. Called in, and Snortweed specifically worked really well, like 3 or 4 other deer that same size, to no avail of killing them. But it was like, oh my gosh, this is a video game here.
Sure.
Like, as a South Carolina hunter, this is a video game. Mm-hmm. And so he invited me back for the next 8 or 9 years as a guest, and then I started leasing his uncle's land next to it, and so I had a lot of a lot of I knew that I learned the property over the next 10 years, and then this past year I bought the uncle's property, a portion of that, and so that's my farm now. But it's nice because I already have all my stands. I have 15 bucks I've killed off the property. So I know every wind position. I know ingress, egress everywhere. I know what it can produce. I mean, I've killed a 185 inch 23 point with my bow.
Yep.
I killed a 158 with my bow. 4 days later, killed a 163 out of the same stand with my rifle. And none of this, no cameras, no food plots. Just
raw hunting.
I think this tree would be good based on this. I'm going to go up that tree and I'm not going to leave until the wind's wrong.
Yeah.
And then when the wind's wrong, you get down and you go to a different place. And so we've done pretty well there. And every year I've shot a good.
Yeah, literally every year.
Every year.
I know when I see the social media post headed to Missouri, I'm like, well, it's going to be about 4 or 5 days, and we're going to see a picture.
Something happens, and it's. I've listened to a lot of your stuff. I've listened, and you and John Dudley, are like on my speed dial text. And Dudley only lives like 90 miles from there, so he's hunting a similar time. So I'll be hitting him that last week of October, like, hey man, how we looking? He's like, you better get your butt up here. Like,
Here we go.
And so but no, it's been very good. I've learned a ton. I've screwed up a ton. Because you get so many reps. It's hard to learn that much in South Carolina, but when you see, you sit a rut funnel and see 20 bucks in a day, but inside 200 yards, like, you learn a lot.
Of course.
You learn a ton, and I've missed some giants. I've seen some giants. I've not pulled my bow back on giants. I've killed a few of them. And so it's like, it's such a learning ground, because when you don't have the feedback, South Carolina, you sit and you grunt or rattle. You do it for the rest of your life, and you might rattle up one deer ever,
right,
in my opinion. And so I don't know, am I wrong? Is the deer just not here? Like, I don't know, but I know if I could see that deer, I think it was a Jay talking about if he could see the deer. I was listening to your podcast the other day, and if I could see that deer 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3, I could get him within bow range.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of just found snort wheeze generally works the best.
Mm-hmm.
I still use rattling antlers, about 130 inch 10-point antlers.
Yep.
But I've also been busted a lot of times because I'll get lazy. I'll rattle, nothing will happen. I'll sit down, and then 20 minutes later I'll stand up, and buck's within 20 yards looking at me, and he snuck in. I just get,
right.
I'm not that good.
No.
Right? But no, that place is just there's nowhere on earth I'd rather be in early November.
Yep. And again, it goes back to what we talked about on previous podcast, is the relationships that you built there.
Yes.
Over time, and then the intimate knowledge of the property. You can bounce every year from Ohio to Kansas to Illinois to Missouri, and it's nothing like understanding fully. Like, I guarantee you that if you get a daylight picture in a certain area on that farm, you're like, oh yeah, I can kill that deer right here. Yeah, but because you're intimately familiar with that. Now, it doesn't always work, but you have stacked the deck so far in your favor because this happened, and the chances of it happening over here are monumental.
And just, you're exactly right. 12 hours a day in a tree for 7 or 8 days in a row for 10 years, you learn a lot of stuff, and you just kind of learn, like, 70 yards that way, 85% of the deer I see go under that tree. Well, guess what?
We'll be right over there.
We're going to be moving it. And so little stuff you continue to learn, but you're exactly right. And but like you said, knowing the property, but also building the relationships. I have a house that I stay up there who's a known guy in town. He knows that I'm looking to lease other places, so I'll get another 100 acres here, another 80 acres here, another 200 acres here. And so within 10 miles, I have probably 600 or 700 acres. And so as I could blow out and not blow up spots, now that's a whole different, my farm is my core thing, but I'm not going to blow up one of my best places. I have a stand I call Kamikaze. And you're going in on a death run. You better kill that day. You have to get in there early while the deer are still in the field. And it's a hilltop bedding area on a corner on a on a little funnel, but they come back to bed right under you. In the last 3 years, I've shot a Pope and Young buck out of it. Last year was 7 yards, and they just and it's like,
the spot.
It's the spot in the morning, but I found out in the evening it's not. So I have to, and I've screwed that one up enough times when the thermals go back down the hill.
Yep.
And so you kind of just learn these little spots. I got a new spot I call Willie Nelson because it's really, really high.
That's hilarious.
And it's a real hard funnel that's like a crossing and this and that. So my last day when I was there, I kind of moved it around. So I'm looking forward to, I got my guy out there's putting a camera on Willie Nelson here soon, and we'll see.
Perfect. And I'll also guarantee you that the relationships you've built out there, a lot of them have become lifelong friends. And it's not, I try and preach this as much as possible. It's not a wait till October to reach out and talk to these folks. You're talking to them all year, and you like have a genuine friendship with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's Christmas gifts, it's Christmas cards, it's T-shirts in the summertime. It's whatever I could do to make their life better, because they certainly make my life better.
Mutual.
In that 10 days or whatever I'm there. And, that's when they're looking to sell the farm and you're the first guy they call.
Yeah.
That's in South Carolina.
Yep.
And they're like, hey, we really like having you as a tenant. We figured, I spread my dad's ashes out there.
Right.
Like, I want my kids to sit in the same stands that my dad sat. And so they understood my connection to the land. And then I think the other thing is you try not to make mistakes, not only from a hunting strategy standpoint, but a personnel standpoint of just don't do things that piss off the landowner.
Of course.
Right? Like, just be cognizant where you drive. Be making sure. I know now when I'm coming, when I leased it, it was 3 days out. I told him the date I was going to be there, 3 days out. I told him, I confirmed it. The day I showed up, I confirmed it. I don't ever want to be walking down through a field and him go, who is that guy down there? And just forget that I came down there. Now I set myself up in a disadvantaged position because I haven't shown that man respect.
Sure.
And so that is the biggest thing. And just be a person and make if you walk into a room, try to make everyone's life better because you're there.
Yes, sir.
And that's business, that's deer hunting. And when you do that, generally you get a lot of cool places to hunt.
For sure. No, that's cool. Well, I want to, if you got time, I got a couple
all the time in the world.
All right, awesome. So a couple other things I want to talk about. We try to always, I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to archery equipment.
Oh, yeah.
So when we have guys on that are serious about it like you are, and obviously Dudley's one of your buddies, walk us through your setup for whitetail. Like what do you like as far as, and as much detail or as little detail as you want to go into, but like bow setup. Yep. Let's just start with the bow.
Yeah. So for years I shot a Matthews Legacy that I bought down at that Tom set me
Jeffries,
up. Jeffries set me up with a Cobra sight and a Rage, early days Rage, and that's what I killed my giant with, of course, right? And my sights were 25, 35, 45 for some reason. But anyway, so I hunted with that for like 17 years, and then Kip Fulks is a buddy of mine, and he kind of is the one that kind of pushed me to get really more back serious about bow hunting. We started working with Cam and stuff like that. So I shot a Hoyt for a while. I shot 82-pound Hoyt. It was great. Killed a couple things with it. It was fine.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second.
Yeah.
Just so everybody's aware, Kip Fulks, one of the founders of Under Armour, just want to throw that out there. Yeah. So they might not know, but these are the type people that Bert's talking with to get information. So
I try to go to the people that know what they're talking about. Hence why you get so many texts.
I don't know about that.
So when Dudley went to PSE, he was like, hey, man, like I'd like to, we did a little trade and some stuff like that. So I shot a PSE for a couple of years, and PSE made a great bow. I killed a lot of stuff with it. I had that NTN. Then I moved to the Levitate. I still think the Levitate was an amazing, super light bow. I call it the Heat Seeker. It didn't know how to miss. It was just a stomper. This year I'm on the Hoyt RX9.
Yes.
And I really, really like it. I just haven't had the reps with it that I had with my PSE. I think they're in the same vein for sure.
You like the draw cycle? And
the Levitate draw cycle was pretty aggressive. Like you had to get used to it. It was whop, came back.
Yeah, and it was like a Ferrari ready.
It was angry. Yeah. It wanted to eat. Yeah, but it ate,
Sure.
And so I'm shooting 76 pounds with a 523 grain arrow. I've been shooting,
300 feet per second.
Yep, 30 and a half inch draw, and it helps me that John Dudley and I shoot the exact same setup.
Oh, that's
same
real
size,
good. Yes.
and he knows he could literally take his bow, pull the peep up a quarter inch, and
you're
send it to
dialed.
me, and it's dialed. So when I buy a bow from him, it literally comes, and I have to put I know I'm very blessed in this regard. But he jokes with me. He's like, stop messing with your bow. And I'm like, okay, because if you need to help, just send it to me. And I'm like, okay, perfect. He's like, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
And because I'll probably screw it up. I got too many other things to do. So I've been shooting raised tripans the last few years. The no collars.
Yes.
I killed the snot out of stuff with them.
Excellent
I
head.
love them. I'm shooting the Axis arrow 4 vein. I guess it'd be right helical.
Yep.
And a 523, 528 grain, a little bit weight heavy in the front.
Yep.
76 pounds, 30 and a half inches. I think I'm shooting around 290s.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. A lot of KE, enough anyway.
Right. Yeah. 290 is a great speed.
Yeah, I shot a buck a couple years ago, and I used an Ozcut, which was a great little head. My
Fixed
bow
blade,
shot
yeah.
him really well. It was a 100 grainer, and I shot a buck a bit far back, and so I texted Doug. I was like, "Hey man, this is where I hit him. What are your thoughts?" He's like, "Yeah, it might be lung, liver," and he's like, "Well, what head did you use?" And I showed him. And then he just, because he was with Trypan at the time, Rage. Why didn't you shoot a Trypan? I go, because these shoot really well. He goes, you would have watched him fall with that giant hole in the side of him.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I want to make sure penetration. He goes, your bow is shooting through elephants. He's like, you have 95 KE. He's like, shoot something that cuts a hole this big if you want. I'm like, okay, good point. So actually, I went to the Rage, the 2.3 Extreme after that. And man, you talk about I call it the flying cleaver.
It is something.
The air cleaver. And but I've kind of settled on that Trypan. I'm shooting a Fast Eddie 2-pin, or the 2-pin with the
Spot Hog.
The Spot Hog. Yep. I shoot a Spot Hog with a boa trigger. Finger trigger. I can't remember the name of it. I tried the back tension and everything. I just couldn't.
The thumb release.
I've just done this too many times in life.
Yeah. Trigger finger.
Trigger finger. You shoot a BB gun 8 million times.
Well, I've seen you shoot. I mean, at Winter Strong, and you shoot good.
Well, thank you. I
shoot
appreciate it.
very good.
I think I shoot good enough.
That 60-yard target doesn't stand a chance.
It has a problem. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It has a problem. But the bow shoots flat, and my shortest shot I shoot usually in training is 52. That's my opener every day. So 52 to 60 is and that kind of goes into that training we were going to talk about. But that's where I'm at. So I'm trying to think if there's any. I think
no, we hit everything.
Yeah, I don't think anything else. I think I use a Riddance a stabilizer. I don't use a back bar. For me, I just like to have the bow as light as possible, and a lot of stuff not on it. And I haven't.
They're overused. Back bars are overused, and they look good. But
I don't want a lot of crap hanging on my bow.
Right.
I Tom set my old bow up with one, and it just I didn't see a marked improvement in performance, and so that's kind of at hunting distances. If I don't miss now, hunting distances on foam targets, not hunting distance because I'm certainly not infallible. But if the arrow goes where I want it to go now, why am I adding crap to my bow?
Of course.
And so kind of boil it down, and that's a lot of people say, well, you ought to try this, you ought to try that. I go, listen, Dudley knows a lot more about bows than I do.
Yes.
He set this up and says, don't screw it up. It'll go where you want it to go, and it always goes where I want it to go. So kind of like Forrest Gump, one less thing, right?
One less thing.
One less thing.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, and that's the same bow I shoot elk with, red stag, hogs, deer, tack events. People are like, well, you get a different bow for tack for it.
No, I want to shoot my hunting bow.
I want to shoot my hunting bow because I've shot 8 million reps with this thing all year.
Right.
And a 78-yard elk target comes up, I move it to 78 and I shoot it, and it generally goes where I want it to.
Yes.
And so the confidence is built, and that's where we kind of talk about that training side. Repetitive confidence is as big of a thing as anything physical.
Yep.
So that's my setup.
Yeah, that's awesome.
As far as optics, I really like those SIG stabilized binoculars. I was a Swaro guy for 30 years. I still love their stuff, no question. But man, those stabilized binoculars are voodoo magic.
Yeah, I looked at them when I was out at the event, and they are awesome.
Strangely enough, right? And for the price, I use a Leupold, that full draw rangefinder. Those are kind of like my must go to kind of deals. My boots, I go all over the map.
Yeah.
Based on whatever works for the time. I know you kind of go like more of a hiking boot or a shoe.
Yeah.
I guess it's so built into my head that you got to have rubber boots to be a bow hunter, but obviously you don't.
Yeah, it's all situational. You know, kind of your access and you know, I've obviously got a couple pair of rubber boots, and I will wear them. And we're actually, you know, everybody's talking about the tariffs right now, but so it's going to date our podcast, but. We've got boots hopefully coming for Osseo. So yeah, some really, really comfortable. Well, there's a pair of them sitting right there.
Nice.
Wrong camo on those, but
nice.
Yes, and they fit like a tennis shoe. They're really, really good.
Set aside a 13s for me.
Yes, I will.
That sounds perfect
for sure.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting things about getting an opportunity to sit down with you was to talk about training, and off air we talked about whitetail training. You know, yeah. Wells just walked in with
cool.
that boot.
Let's check them out. Look at these things. Oh, those are dope. Oh,
yeah. So it's got the Osseo pattern.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. So those will be pretty neat.
Yeah. Let me know when those come in.
For sure.
For sure. I like they're not big and floppy right here.
Yeah, and they are light and comfortable. Yes. But
yeah, put me down.
You know, we talk about whitetail, and you know, if you look across the whole spectrum, there's not a whole bunch of in shape guys that take fitness. They put fitness with elk hunting. They put fitness with Cameron Haynes.
Sure.
Chasing elk, chasing mule deer, hunting sheep, hunting goats, and not a lot of guys look at being physically fit for whitetail, and that's your real specialty, if you will.
I appreciate that.
I mean, you know that side of the world, if you will, the fitness side of it. And I think you will, and I'd love for you to touch on what you do and what you think guys should do, but you obviously think it's very important to be physically fit for life, but also for whitetail hunting.
100%. And I'll go within a few, and I agree with you. The elk and the mule deer, all that gets like the big fit stuff. But I've also found, and I know someone's going to disagree with me. They're going, I weigh 350 pounds with a 50% body fat, and I killed it. Oh, great, man. Fantastic.
Right.
Awesome. I would also say, if you want to do it for a long time in life, probably being fit and losing weight would help you enjoy that for longer. Because I've been around long enough, and in the fitness world, I know they don't make big old men. Old men or big men don't last a long time.
Right.
So I want to have a time to enjoy what I love to do as long as humanly possible. And bottom line is, if you're more fit, you could regulate your heart rate better. That allows you to create and choose and make better choices under stress. Little things like that. So I look at it from a human performance side. A better way to phrase this is not fitness, but human performance. Because my goal is to win.
Yeah.
Right. Like whether it's business, whether it was win. Okay. So now we have to break up performance. Now this might get a little heady. We'll break up human performance into two things. There's training and there's competition, and those are two significantly different things. And when people get them mistaken, they switch them too much. Training is the ability to have stress induction. We put as much stress on the system as possible, Listen to that part. That doesn't break the system. So you get to come back and do it again tomorrow. So I want to take as much load tolerance as possible. Now this is physical load, mental load, emotional load. And if you're truly training for performance, you're training for all of it. A buck walking down a hill coming at you, 180-inch deer walking down at you is an emotional event.
Without a doubt.
Right? And choking is a real thing. They call it buck fever in the woods. In sports, they call it choking. Hey, I'm at bat, in the World Series. People choke. people choke at the Olympic trials. I know I did.
Okay.
Right? So it's a thing. That was not physically, I was unable to compete. Mentally and emotionally, I had not been there. So what I realized is the stress induction I had received going into my first Olympic trials, I had not received enough of that type of stress to emotionally hold my stuff together. So that's where I will talk about performance is all of that. So going back to training. Training is what is the highest tolerance I could build for stress, and while not quite letting it break me. Mm-hmm. Competing is what is the least I can do and the least amount of resources I could spend to get to the desired result, i.e. winning, mm-hmm. i.e. putting an arrow through that buck, i.e. whatever that is. It's a really two different economies. Now, the higher capacity you build in training makes the capacity for what you could do in winning considerably different. I know it's a weird way to look at it.
No, that's very fascinating.
But that's where I look at people that screw it up. I've competed against people that they wanted to over effort to get where they're going, and day 3 they don't have anything left. This isn't training. This is competing. So you look at it like shopping. Okay, if we're going to go shop. Training is your job. You're putting money in the bank. You're doing all you got to do to you're working overtime, you're getting time and a half, you're letting interest do its part, you're building up that nest egg. And when I got to go buy something, I'm going to use that money to compete and get what I want. I don't want to spend as much as I have. I want to spend as little as I want. I want to have as much discount as I could get. I want to have as much rebate as I could get. I want to shop around, and I want to get the best deal I possibly can because I want to resource manage. Mm-hmm. And so kind of going back to that whole thing is training, it takes up the majority of the time, but it peaks into the mindset of competition. So I know that was a lot.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So my first phase of training will be what we call GPP, General Physical Preparedness. That's what the Russians call it, Americans call it conditioning. Mm-hmm. So it's just moving stuff around, moving your body around, moving stuff around. And, I sell weightlifting equipment, so we could go super deep water, what all that looks like. For the average guy out there, that could be as simple as grab a bag of corn left over from last year, walk it up and down the driveway for 20 minutes, and holding about 20 different methods that you could hold it, and your work capacity will go up. Mm-hmm. Great, that's training. And then tomorrow we're going to do it for 21 minutes. And then the third day we're going to take off. And then the next day we're going to come back and do it for 21 minutes. And the next day we're going to do it for 22 minutes. You see what's happening? We're stair-stepping our ability to accommodate to that resistance. That's training. That's all it is. It's the Milo principle. Milo picked up a cow. He walked it around the stadium. Every day the cow got bigger. Every day he got stronger. It's stair-stepping stress inoculation.
Yes.
Okay? So we're going to do it as much as we can without breaking. Right? Because, of course, if we picked up the cow day 1 and when he's a full-size cow, we're going to break our back. We don't get to play the game anymore.
Right.
So the first things I'm going to be doing is work capacity. That's rucking. That means putting something heavy in a backpack. I'm going to walk. There's no thing specific about it. My core is going to get stronger. My wind is going to get better. My legs are going to get a little stronger. Everything's just going to kind of better. I'm going to be better to deal with that stress, okay? And then I'll start paring it down, and I'll go into, let's say, more strength-based squats, deadlifts, pushes, pulls, kind of building more of a strength base. Now, the whole time, what you'll start finding is, as the more work you put in, as you well know, I mean, obviously you do this all the time, you'll get more fit, you'll get more strong, and, if you're eating pretty well, meaning high protein, less sugar as possible, that's the basics. I don't care.
Yep.
If people want to know, I don't even know what to eat. More protein, less sugar. Do that.
Sure.
Just do that.
Cut alcohol out.
Cut alcohol out. More protein, less sugar, move around more. You'll be in a better position. And that will enable you to do all these things that you want to do. So we start with that, general physical preparedness. We work into some maximal strength stuff, just getting stuff stronger. Then later I will go into what I'll consider sport-specific training. For an archer, what might that look like? Well, this little guy has to work pretty hard.
Yes.
So not only is there a pull on this side, so that's lat, that's trap, that's rhomboid, that's rotator cuff, and that's bicep. Great. So I'm going to do rows. I'm going to do pull-ups. I'm going to do sled pulls with one hand. I'm going to do stuff like that. Well, there's another side of this whole
Push, push, push.
push, push, push. So those are good push-ups, bench press, things like that. So it's tricep, frontal delt, so the pec to it a little bit extent. So if I get those pieces strong, then controlling my bow isn't a problem.
Right.
And so now I've taken a general piece, general fitness, I put it into some strength. Now I'll put in some specific strength that allows me to pull back a 76-pound bow whenever I want, at whatever temperature I want. I don't think about it. I'm not some big badass. It's just I'm strong.
You're trained for it.
And I'm trained for it.
Sure.
And no, if I was weaker, it would be a 60-pound bow. It's fine. I just shoot as big a bow as I can because, I'd rather do it as hard as I can here. So this is really easy, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of how the training goes. And then when I get, and then you do what we call sports training, which is the actual shots. So that is, we do the shoot to eat challenge. That's one of the kind of culminating pieces, which is more mental training than anything. So before that, I'll start physical training, which might mean we're shooting reps, just regular shots, what I'll call game time shots. Regular boom, 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 we're shooting. Now we're going to add distance. One of the variables, we're going to add more distance. That's going to not only expose technical difficulties or technical weaknesses in my shot, but it's also going to work mentally. When I see a 70-yard whitetail target, I know if I do my part, the arrow's going where I want it to go. I'm not worried about that. It's a mental training side of it. Now, people, you shouldn't shoot whitetails at 70 yards. I'm not.
Right.
30 yards in, that sounds great, but at 70, if you're shooting all the time, 30 yards feels like just hair is everywhere.
A chip shot. Every pin is on him, yeah.
Right? So going through that, and so we'll start that, and now I'll start adjusting some of the variables. One of the variables might be I'm going to take it, maybe a lot of times I'll shoot a set of 3 arrows. So my first shot will be what I'll call game time, just as I would in the woods. My second one, I'll draw, and for 15 seconds, I'll hold, then I'll shoot. My third shot, I'll hold for 30 seconds, then I'll shoot, and I'll compare the arrows. Now, is there a difference? If there's a difference, that means fatigue is setting in, and that is my weakness. If they're all the same, then strength ain't my weakness. Then my ability to hold together in that time is good. So that's a little bit of a litmus. I'll go from that. I'll go into so do you know James Nash?
Know the name.
Six Ranch Outfitters, I believe, and so he's a really neat guy. And he and I were talking. He guides elk, and he told me, I said, "What is the end all be all?" He goes, "If a guy can draw his bow, hold it for 30 seconds, lower it down quietly without the arrow jumping off, pull it back and make a 30-yard shot," he goes, "that man will kill an elk." I go, "What?" He goes, "Most guys aren't familiar enough with their draw cycle, so they know the concentric or the eccentric portion of what their bow's doing, so that tells me the time they've had with their bow." He goes, "They're not strong enough when that thing breaks over to take that big pull." He goes, "So they're just not strong enough for that bow. They can't do it without doing all kinds of wacky stuff." He goes, "If you could hold your bow and just do that with it and then take it back down," he goes, "I'm looking at a killer." He goes, "And I'm not saying you got to shoot at 80 yards. He goes, "You get a guy that could do that and shoot at 30, he will kill an elk."
He is proficient as can be with his equipment.
Correct. So if you're training, you're going to do that. And so sometimes the shot is hold for 30 seconds, lower, hold for 30 seconds, shoot at 55 yards. And what it is doing is physically training me, but mentally, I know, let me see a deer within my scope because I've done these reps. And I was at, and again, I don't want to come off like I'm some freaking ninja, but I trained for the best case scenario to hopefully happen.
Sure.
Right? And that's something that all of us could do at whatever level. I was saying just change the variables and make it more difficult. If you're shooting in your backyard, stand on a milk crate and shoot. Feels like you're standing on a wobbly wobbly stand, I used to, 25 years ago when I started bow hunting, I would take arrows and I would throw them all over my yard. And I would sprint to each one, load it, and shoot without range finding it. Because I wanted to start getting like a quarterback that could just open skill, put that ball wherever I want it. And after a while, you start learning. I got a Kentucky windage, a little bit here, a little bit there. The more you run, the heart rate goes up. Well, that feels very similar to being excited, or you're stalking an elk, you're coming in belly crawling, and you got to make a shot. Or you hammer your way up this mountain. I was with Cam Haynes in 2019. We went up Mount Pisgah. That was horrible, by the way. He does that so easily. It's so dumb. And I'm dying up on the top. I'm a big guy and whatever, and I had done a lot of cardio. So we get near the top, and I'm like walking, and he's like, "Hey man, you ready to go?" And I was like, "Man, this is crazy." He goes, "You know why I do this every day?" I go, "Why?" He goes, "If we rounded that corner and there was a 400-inch bull at 70, could you make that shot right now?" And I go, "No." He goes, "That's why I do this every day."
Yeah.
He goes, "Because I could."
Yep.
And you're like, okay. But that is, I will stress. So if that one day happens, I've removed that variable of that low percentage shot of it's kind of like if they call my number on the lottery, answer the phone that day. Be
Sure.
available, right?
Yes.
The best ability is availability. And so like that hard amount of training. So like we'll do some of that type of training. I'll do hypoxic training, which I learned from a spear fisherman, Danny Bolton. So I'll put arrows in a pile and I'll go to 40, 50 yards, whatever it is, and I'll take one breath of air and I'll see how many kill shots I could do on one breath of air. Super easy. But what you'll start doing on arrow 3 or 4, you'll learn how to slow as smooth as fast. You'll learn how to efficiently shoot quickly.
Yes.
And not jack around a lot because you're against the clock of your oxygen. You'll start kind of blacking out on arrow 4 and 5, and which feels really similar to being at altitude or being super excited. So it's like living at 250 feet elevation. You could do other things that stress inoculate yourself. And that's where I say, I know this all sounds like for elk, but we all carry a lot of gear to our stand, especially in the Midwest. You're carrying a stand, you're carrying your pack, you're carrying maybe hip boots because you got to cross a river and all this crap you're carrying. And I get tired walking up a 300-yard hill that's all this stuff. And I go, oh my gosh, if I wasn't in shape, I'd be dying. And if I was that, I'd be sweating more. I'd be pouring out more scent. I'd be doing all these things. And when I get up the tree and I'd be stressing out and all this other stuff, I'm throwing out pheromones of all this, and I go, how do I minimize that as much as humanly possible? And if I got to walk up this hill with a 30-pound pack, I'm going to take my time, I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to kill that deer when I get up there. And so that's some of the things I wish people would look at. Some of it's weightlifting, some of it's moving, but a lot of it's just the mentality. And then I kind of culminated with this shoot to eat, as we've talked about, we'll do every year, August-ish. So my thought process was, a lot of times when we were shooting our bow, you walk out, and I would do it, and I'd shoot a couple at 20 and a couple at 30, and I'd work myself up. Well, I thought about it, I said, man, a lot of times when I was hunting those rut hunts, you get out before it's daylight, you come back after it's dark, you're not shooting at camp much, and I might go a week without shooting my bow. Maybe you pull it back a time or two and just to kind of keep yourself moving around. But you get out of that practice. So I said, all right, I need to be stress inoculated mentally and emotionally to, if you and I were standing here right now, you're like, Bert, we're going to stop this podcast and walk outside right now, and I need you to hit a pie plate at 75 yards right now. And like, could I do that? And the idea was, how do I train where I could do that? Mm-hmm. So I would wake up, I'd take a 2-week period of time. I wake up in the morning and I put my flip-flops on, I take a drink of water, I walk outside, I grab my bow, and cold as can be, and I start the 2-week period on a shot that is difficult, not impossible.
Sure.
For me, it usually starts at 50. I started one year at 60, which is a bit strong. And if I could hit a first shot, cold bore, single shot, kill shot, then I'll allow myself to have breakfast, I'll allow myself to have coffee, or otherwise I have to fast until lunch. Not a big deal. It's just a reminder. It's one more little stressor to put on you to go, hey, this matters. Let's not screw this up. I need to at least be able to focus for an extra 3 seconds to get the job done. Because what happens with buck fever, we've all done it, you lose focus for that little bit. You look at his horns, you look at where he's stepping, you look at something, the sun gets whatever, you make some dumb shot and you hit him in the butt.
Yeah.
We've all done it.
Of course.
So the thought process is, and hey, great, you hit it, you go enjoy your breakfast, whatever, but tomorrow, it's 51 yards. Everything always gets harder. So it's now there's another little stressor. I hadn't hit 51, tomorrow's 51. And then that always pushes to where I better do my homework tonight. I'm going to come home and I'm going to shoot 51
right
until because I'm hungry and I'm going to eat tomorrow.
Yes.
And then so it's like boom, boom, boom. And all I got to do, I'll go out the next morning, bam. You hit it, tomorrow's 52. So that's telling me again, I better do my homework tonight.
Yep.
Or I'm going to miss it, and I'm going to be hungry, and for the next 5 hours, I'm going to be pissed off about it.
Not getting your coffee.
Not getting my coffee, not getting my food, and I'll post it, and we'll run on Sorinex Outdoors.
Yeah, it's
the
picked up
challenge.
a lot.
And so we'll post it, and so there's the social pressure of like, ooh, like I thought you were a good shot. You missed that one, and you're like, you have to own it. You're like, yeah, I lost focus today. I didn't do my job. And then I had a couple guys. We were a bunch of us were doing it. And one of the guys, which I thought was cool, they traded. So Bo Sandoval and Brian Trainer, they shot for each other. So if Bo made it, Brian ate, and so it was really cool because they're like, no, I'm making sure my buddy gets to eat.
Right.
And so there's an extra bit of pressure. Of like your friend.
Yeah, that's good.
You're like, man, sorry, dude. Like and he's like, come on, man, I need you to do your homework.
Gotta
like,
have
Daddy's
my coffee.
hungry,
Yes.
So it was a really cool thing. But like that was again just a method of incentivizing training, incentivizing focus. And then so that's kind of what I looked at taken from my old track and field days, how to build a bulletproof mind of competition. So when I go in to compete on Missouri, I sit up on top of that hill or on wherever I'm sitting. I know I've done everything that I know how to do to create success.
Well, your confidence level is at a peak.
At a peak. It's just, it may be sometimes too confident.
Yeah, sure.
But you're like, yeah, if I could see that deer, I could probably put an arrow in it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of regulate that with reality. But I had a deer 3 years ago in Utah. My bow was 76 pounds, and I drew on him, and on the clock, I held full draw for 2.5 minutes. Now, 2.5 minutes, I wasn't in any state to shoot, but he was looking at me, and I just had to keep holding. I'm sitting there with my guide. My guide's like, dude, like he's still looking, and then we're at like 50 yards, and he's just like, man, you got to keep. And we're at about a minute. I was like, don't worry, I got this. No problem. I could be here forever. And about a minute and a half, you're like, all right.
Forever's a long time.
Forever is a lot longer than I thought. And about at 2 minutes, I'm like, your eyes are going freaked out. But I mean, he was a good buck, and I didn't want to shoot him. I just want to be able to let down so I could regather. And then like at 2.5 minutes, like I'm convulsing, and then finally he looks down for a split second. I just lower the boat and I just fall flat and I just lay there in the middle of the desert. And he's like, you good? He's like, you need to shoot this deer. I was like, give me a minute.
1 minute. Yeah.
1 minute and we'll be fine again. But I remember thinking, like in my mind going, I'm glad I did all those rows. I'm glad I did all those ISO holds. Because let's say if 45 seconds into it, he'd have put his head down, I'd probably put one in.
Sure.
But that confidence of going, I've done my homework. This isn't to chance. And that's where I would say, yes, plenty of guys that don't train, they kill stuff. But I also know the guys that kill the most stuff are all doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yep.
I constantly see. You can't tell me in sports this is a sport. It's performance-based. I've never seen someone that is less fit have it help them. And so there's a long way to get around to it, but I can't tell you how important it is from a performance level, mind clarity, confidence, and everything, and just longevity to do what we love to do. My goal is to be that old dude that's still bow hunting or whatever hunting in the woods where everyone's like, holy crap, you're 75 still doing this and running up and down mountains? Like, yeah, I can't, but I can't do it if I can't do it at 52.
Right.
So it's like, let's keep this going. And the best time to start training was yesterday. The second best time is today.
Without a doubt.
That's it. So
yeah.
That's my long diatribe on training and competing.
Man, thank you so much. We're going to have to do a part 2 of this. This is awesome, but we could talk for another 2 hours.
Oh, it's so fun always talking to you. I needed to let you talk a lot more. I always just bend your ear. I mean, you helped me kill that both bucks that I killed this year in South Carolina.
Awesome.
I was hitting you with ideas, and you're the one that actually told me to multi-camera that buck that's right down the road that I killed. And you're like, man, it's like I'd go in there, I'd put a camera on every big trail going in and find out where he's coming from.
There you go.
And I think 2 weeks later we got him, and then and so it's pretty cool for those out there. Like we basically share a boundary.
Yes.
On our hunting, and that's where I commend you on your success, because I know that these deer are hard to hunt.
Well, what I love about it is, our season here starts August 15th, and it's 95 degrees, 80% humidity, but we'll get an 82 afternoon, and it's so funny. I'll be driving down Beckham, and I'll get a text from me, and are you in yet? Are you?
I'll see your truck go by.
Yes, yeah, because we just got that little bit of a break from that scorching heat, and we're both in the woods that afternoon.
We're on the same road.
Yeah, same road,
well,
same spot.
I was like, I hear a truck coming. I'll go, oh,
I know who that is. Yeah, because the weather was good, so it's awesome. It really is, man.
I appreciate all the time that you've taken, and Mission Whitetail podcast is one of the few podcasts I listen to just about every episode. The guests that you have on here, the topics that you talk about, and the big thing is because of where you are. You're not hunting a video game. You're hunting South Carolina, which for those who don't think it's hard, come on down and see how big a boy are you. It's and I'm not saying it's like magic or whatever, but if you do it consistently down here, you're doing stuff right and you're doing things right, and I've learned a ton from you, and I just appreciate our friendship and appreciate
yes, sir.
Your mentorship.
No, your mentorship, man. I tell you, the more we talk about business, I know this is the Mission Whitetail podcast. We need to have like a business section of it, because I appreciate everything you do.
Be too stupid to quit.
God, that's it. Work hard and go.
That's kind of with everything. Just be too stupid to quit.
Yeah.
Just believe. After I killed my big whitetail, that 185 up at there, I was looking at something and I'm seeing like the chances of basically, because he greened about 200, and I was telling my wife, I was like, I think that's a 200-inch buck. And I looked up an article, and it said the chances of killing a 200-inch buck with an arrow, and it was like 46 more times likely to pitch a no-hitter in the Game 6 of the World Series, or 28 times more likely to get hit by lightning, like all these things. And I remember reading it, and I'm like sitting there with a smile on my face. She's like, "You think you're going to do it again, don't you?" And I go, "Absolutely."
Yes, that's the plan.
That is 100% the plan.
Yes.
I was like, because now I know it's doable.
Yep.
Because the 10-year-old Bert didn't think it was doable. You screwed up and let me know it was doable now.
Yes.
And so, but people say, statistically it won't happen. Hey, man, I've seen a lot of people do it.
Yeah.
And so,
why not me?
Why not me?
Yeah.
What, one man
7 employees to 18 employees to 200 employees. Why not me?
You're too dumb to stop.
Yes, sir. Awesome, brother.
Thanks,
Thank you so much. Thanks
yes,
a
sir.
lot.